Most history textbooks tell a similar story. For most of human existence, people lived as hunter-gatherers. Life was uncertain, resources were unstable, and survival depended on constant movement. Then agriculture emerged. Food became predictable, surpluses appeared, and civilization followed. It is a clean narrative. It is internally logical. But it does not align well with the evidence. When we examine the archaeological record, agriculture does not appear to improve human life in its early stages. In several measurable ways, it appears to make it worse. That raises a basic question. Why did human societies adopt a way of life that reduced health, increased labor, and introduced new risks, and then build civilization on top of it? The progress story and the evidence. The standard account treats agriculture as a technological breakthrough. More food, greater security, and eventually the conditions for art, science, and complex society. Early agricultural communities, however, present a different picture. First, labor demands increased substantially. Hunter-gatherer life involved uncertainty, yes, but food was often abundant, and daily workloads were relatively limited. While estimates vary, the pattern is consistent. Early farming required significantly more hours of repetitive, physically demanding labor than hunting and gathering. Second, nutritional quality declined. When archaeologists compare skeletal remains, hunter-gatherers are often taller than early farmers. Height is not a perfect measure, but it is a reliable indicator of long-term nutrition. Hunter-gatherer diets were diverse: meat, fruits, nuts, and wild plants. Early farmers relied heavily on a narrow range of cultivated grains. The result was reduced dietary variety. Third, disease increased. Permanent settlements brought humans and domesticated animals into close, continuous contact, often surrounded by waste with no sanitation systems. These conditions are ideal for the spread of infectious disease. Taken together, the pattern is consistent: more labor, poorer nutrition, and greater disease burden. If civilization begins with agriculture, then civilization begins not with improvement, but with a decline in individual well-being. The central puzzle. This creates a problem. If the goal of human societies were simply to maximize health or comfort, the widespread adoption of agriculture is difficult to explain. We cannot ask the people who lived through this transition. Instead, we infer motivations using archaeology, anthropology, psychology, and comparative primate behavior. From this evidence, several explanations are commonly proposed: coercion, warfare, care for elders, and religion. All are plausible at first glance, but they do not perform equally well when tested against the evidence. 3. The limits of coercion. One explanation is coercion, a small elite forcing others into agricultural labor. Hierarchy exists in nature. In some primate species, dominant individuals control access to resources and reproduction. Humans, however, differ in important ways. Physical dominance varies less among humans, and human groups are unusually skilled at cooperation. A single dominant individual does not need to be confronted directly to be removed. Groups can coordinate, outsmart, isolate, or abandon the threat entirely. And mobility matters. Early humans could leave. Coercion may explain isolated cases. It is a weak explanation for a broad, sustained shift toward intensive labor, especially when exit was possible. Warfare in the archaeological record. Another explanation is warfare. Chimpanzees engage in violent territorial conflict. Given our close evolutionary relationship, it is tempting to assume early humans settled down for defense. But we are equally related to bonobos, and bonobos exhibit far lower levels of intergroup violence. Genetics alone does not determine the outcome. Archaeology provides a more direct test. If early settlement were driven primarily by warfare, we would expect consistent evidence: fortifications, specialized weapons, widespread patterns of organized conflict. In the earliest settled sites, this evidence is limited. There is violence: human sacrifice, internal conflict, disturbing burials, but not the systematic warfare expected under this model. Warfare remains possible. It is simply not the strongest explanation. 5. Care for elders and its limits. A third proposal is care for the elderly. Humans do show respect for elders. Long-term social bonds matter. But this explanation relies heavily on modern assumptions about aging and death. Many early societies viewed life as cyclical: birth, death, and return. This does not invalidate the idea. It simply makes it difficult to treat as the primary driver. 6. Religion as the primary driver. The strongest explanation is this: humans did not initially settle in order to farm. They settled for religious reasons. Agriculture followed later, as a consequence. Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe, in modern Turkey, dates to roughly 9,500 BCE. It is not a village. It is not a farming settlement. It is a monumental ritual complex. Massive stone pillars, arranged in circular enclosures, carved with animals. The scale matters. These structures predate agriculture. The religious architecture appears first. Settlement follows later. Religion does not decorate settlement here. Religion produces it. Now Jericho, within the Natufian cultural sphere in the Levant. The Natufians are crucial because they were sedentary hunter-gatherers. They lived in one place year-round without being full-time farmers. They even had domesticated crops available, but they didn't rely on agriculture as their core survival strategy. And they practiced intense ancestor rituals, what archaeologists call the cult of the skull. Human skulls were removed, plastered to recreate faces, and kept in homes. This isn't random macabre behavior. It's a worldview. Ancestors remain present, powerful, and accessible. Then there's the famous tower at Jericho. It was once assumed to be military, but it also functions like a cosmological monument tied to the sun, the landscape, and the timing of the year. In other words, the settlement isn't just about security. It's about aligning a community with a sacred universe, anchoring them in a permanent religious reality. Çatalhöyük, in Turkey, around 7,500 BCE. This place is massive for its time, thousands of people, lasting for centuries. And what stands out is what it doesn't have. No central palace. No obvious seat of government. No giant temple. Instead, religion is inside the home. Each house is filled with ritual art and sacred symbolism: vultures, burials, bulls, fertility imagery. Religion isn't a weekend activity. It's embedded in daily life: birth, death, meals, community. This is what a true religious settlement looks like: a permanent population organized around meaning. The final step: why farming becomes inevitable. Now connect the chain. Hunter-gatherers gather at sacred places. Sacred places become permanent communities. Permanent communities grow. But wild resources around them don't grow with them. Over time, hunting and foraging can't feed thousands of people living in one place. At that moment, a society has a choice. Leave the sacred center, or find a new food system. And if you believe the sacred place is where your ancestors live, where the spirits speak, where the cosmos aligns, then leaving isn't just inconvenient. Leaving is unthinkable. So, they turn to agriculture. Not because it's better, because it's the only way to keep the religious community alive. Agriculture wasn't a triumph. It was a trap that closed slowly. Civilization did not begin because life became easier. It began because humans organized around meaning. And once built, those systems are difficult to leave. In the next episode, we move further back, into the Ice Age origins of symbolic thought itself. Next episode, we go deeper into the origins of spiritual thinking itself, long before temples and cities. In the Ice Age world of cave art,